Hello, everyone, and many thanks for joining this stream news summary from Moscow program. Hopefully, you will find the news segment informative and useful. And in that case, please like the video, leave some commentary that might be helpful to reach wider audience. And also, dear friends, if you are watching this live stream on YouTube, and if you can, if it's convenient enough. Then please consider to sorry, dear friends, I was trying to do something here, and it clearly no. What is this, man? This is wrong. Sorry, dear friends. Sorry, dear friends, for this. I was hoping to drop in the chat for on in YouTube a link to my Rumble. Hopefully, it will work now. For whatever reason, StreamYard dropped its own advertising. Strange. But anyways, okay. I dropped a link. Hopefully it is visible in YouTube chat. And if it's convenient for you, dear friends, please switch to my Rumble channel and watch this live stream there. And if you have a counter, subscribe if you can, because YouTube might kick me out of this platform anytime, and then I will have live streams on Rumble. So yes, that's the little advertising there. So yes, sorry, I'm get a bit confused there in the beginning, but anyways, let's go through some news, dear friends. If there are gonna be any questions or comments or topics that you want to highlight, that I will see through super chat feature on Rumble, or through, if I receive through Boosty or other platforms, support platforms, I will react on it after a news segment. And well, now let's go through some news. My apologies for being a little slow in the beginning of the stream. Hopefully, I will be more concentrated during the rest of the news segment, rest of the program. And let's start our stream with this report from RIA Novosti, which is based on Defense Ministry's latest update on the work of Russian air defense systems on duty past night. And as you can see, dear friends, 67 drones were intercepted by air defense systems past night that were launched by Kyiv regime with assistance of NATO to strike deep into Russian territory. This is basically NATO strikes on Russian Federation, while NATO is using plausible deniability and hiding behind their proxy Kyiv regime. Without NATO assistance, Kyiv regime would not be able to launch these long-range strikes, not even a slight chance of that. But I can give you some details. So Russian air defense systems shut down 24 drones in the Bryansk region, 12 in Saratov region, 11 in Rostov region. In addition to that, 9 drones were intercepted in Volgograd region, 2 each in Kursk and Leningrad regions. And whenever Leningrad region pops out, or St. Petersburg city, by the way, I always think that these drones were launched not from Kyiv control territory, but from neighboring NATO member states. Could be Estonia, could be Finland, any of them, by the way, even Lithuania and Latvia. But probably it's either Estonia or Finland. And as I said a few times before, Moscow is not making statements about it, even if intelligence has data that drones are launched towards Leningrad region from these NATO countries, because if such a statement is made officially, then of course Moscow had to react forcefully. And I guess Moscow is just trying to avoid as much as possible direct open clash with NATO. But how long this will work, how long this restraint will work is anybody's guess. But I don't believe even for a second that drones that are targeting northern Russian regions, for example, Leningrad region, are launched from Kyiv control territory. Impossible. just impossible. Period. Also, two drones were intercepted in the Tula region, quite far away also from a line of contact, and two drones were intercepted over the Moscow region, as well as one each over the Kaluga, Oryol, and Smolensk region. Quite a vast, very vast geography of these NATO strikes on Russia, and it is NATO strikes, by the way. I make no apologies for using this language. This is NATO strikes. Not just Turkey regime, but NATO directly involved in these attacks on Russian Federation, and they will come when these NATO countries will face the consequences for that, whatever those consequences going to be. No details at this point about casualties as a result of these strikes, these particular strikes last night, or any more or less significant damage. If any update on that, of course, I will share additional information in next updates. Also, dear friends, I think this report worth our attention. I mentioned this during yesterday's big community chat, and let me tell you, yesterday's big community chat was great. I'm very thankful to all the members of our community who joined yesterday's community chat and who watched the video afterwards later on. I'm truly grateful for attention and support that I received from community. So thank you very much. I just wanted to highlight this. And yesterday I mentioned this report that the Russian armed forces liberated the Kucherovka settlement, which is on the eastern side of Kupiansk city in the Kharkov region, and also Rovno settlement in the DPR. Rovno is located in between Pokrovsk, which is fully liberated by Russian forces, and the northern part of Mirnograd, or Minograd, let's say, which is still disputed between their sides. So let me show you on the map, dear friends, these areas. So this is Kharkov region, Kupiansk direction, and this is the Kucherovka settlement that is under full Russian control now. Defense Ministry of the Russian Federation confirmed information about this progress. And let me show you the location of another settlement. This is Rovno settlement in between, as I said, in between Pokrovsk, which is under full Russian control, and Mirnograd. And when it comes to Mirnograd, dear friends, there are different reports that are from 1,000 to potentially 2,000, 2,500 troops of Kiev regime are still trapped in Mirnograd without any reliable or safe opportunity to break out of encirclement, and Russian militaries are trying whatever they can, by the way, to basically inform these encircled Kiev regime's formations that in many cases don't even have a communication with their command to inform them about situation that they are in, and the Russian side is offering to surrender. Some troops taking this offer, some troops of Kiev regime, others don't, and when they don't, well, air force and artillery is called in, and the point of concentration of this or that unit that refused to lay down arms and surrender is basically neutralized completely. I guess finalization of a clearing operation in this northern part of Mirnograd will take maybe another week also, if not more, because yet again, concentration of hostile troops are quite high, and there is no hurry on the Russian side. There is no need to liberate Mirnograd for this date or that date. No, Russian troops will take whatever time is necessary to clear the settlement from hostile forces with as much safety as possible, although, of course, we are talking about high-intensity conflict, and nothing is safe there, literally, right? But nevertheless, Russian troops will, of course, try to minimize casualty numbers among Russian troops. So therefore, let them take whatever time is needed, for sure. Also, dear friends, while map is open, let me give you an update on developments in Konstantinovka direction. According to reports, Russian troops on the northern breakthrough area, northern side of Konstantinovka, reached Izhevka, outskirts of the Izhevka settlement, and Popasna settlement. Bizimyaner settlement is already in a gray zone. Russian troops are present there. And well, it was easy to predict, isn't it? And I did it earlier after this breakthrough occurred, that Russian troops are moving towards this main supply and support line that Turkey regime has between Konstantinovka city and Drushkovka city. And I guess maybe even before end of this week, Russian troops will establish fire control, complete fire control over this supply and support line. And after that, we will see significant advances of the Russian forces in the northern side of Konstantinovka. First of all, I guess all these villages, Izhevka, Popasnae, Stenki, Malacharka, Novodmitrovka, Chirvone, Podolskaya, Nikolaevka will be liberated, and then left bank of this river that cuts the settlement, Krivoy, Krivoy Tarets, left bank of the Krivoy Tarets will be liberated in the city, and then Russian troops probably will take care of enemy forces that will be at that point trapped in the left bank. First, we will take care of right bank, yes, and then left bank. It is sometimes confusing. You need to know direction of the river to understand which one is the left bank and the right bank. So my apologies for get confused a little bit. So this is left bank, supposed to be left bank because this river goes like that, I guess, and then enters Black Sea, or one of the rivers, bigger rivers. Anyways, Russian troops are advancing. Russian troops are advancing in Konstantinovka area also. And when it comes to Volchansk, northern part of Kharkov region, dear friends, number of sources are reporting about significant progress of the Russian forces north on the southern side of Volchansk, and allegedly Russian troops are about to finalize clearing operation in Liman village and even Vilcha village, by the way. This map is a little late in its update, but I have seen other maps in which already both settlements are in a gray zone, Vilcha and Liman. So progress of Russian armed forces continues from in the Kharkov region, from the northern direction. Also, and yes, that's about it for this short summary of their situation on the battlefield. When it comes to Zaporozhye region, by the way, there still are three major hotspots right now. On the western side is Stepnogorsk, of course, which is allegedly under encirclement at this point. Of course, I'm not there and I cannot confirm or deny these reports. Also, Orekhov in the central part of this sector, Zaporozhye sector, and Gulyai Pole. And Russian troops advancing inside the Gulyai Pole through numerous directions at this point, from north, from east, from south. And many experts, military experts, are predicting that it would not take too long before Russian troops will establish full control over the Gulyai Pole. And also, let me mention the northern part of DPR. There are reports, by the way, about further progress of the Russian armed forces in between Seversk city and Liman city, and forward units of the Russian armed forces already begun advances or clearing operation, let's say, in Zakatnaya settlement, which is located exactly in the middle between these two cities, Seversk and Liman. So this is Zakatnaya, and Russian troops are further advancing in this massive forestry, by the way, that you see right now on your screen. Of course, it will take time. It will take time before this massive forest will be cleared from the hostile troops. So initiative is in Russian hands all along the front line, and on daily basis we are receiving more and more reports about further advances, and military experts, independent military experts, not just from Russia but also from outside of Russia, from even from Western world, by the way, are acknowledging that Kyiv regime's troops are on a breaking point. I was saying this for quite a while now, and well, many military experts also are on the same page. Seems like that yes, Kyiv regime's troops are on a breaking point, and their collapse, even sectoral scale collapse, may occur on several directions even. And well, that's being said, let's continue with some other news. And this is very important developments. I think that is happening. Russian Foreign Ministry. You can see now a screenshot of statement of Russian Foreign Ministry, according to which ICJ, UN International Court of Justice, accepts basically Russia's genocide case against Ukraine. The UN International Court of Justice has dismissed all of Kiev's objections and accepted Russia's counterclaims under their genocide convention. This follows the ICJ's earlier ruling rejecting every accusation Ukraine tried to level against Russia. Now the court will examine evidence submitted by Moscow, over 10,000 pages documenting mass killings, torture, indiscriminate shelling, and Kiev's campaign to erase Russian identity in Donbass. And I think this is important, even though UN itself has lost reputation big time in past years, even decades, by the way, because UN was unable to. UN was clearly unable to prevent crimes that was committed by numerous countries. First of all, by Western countries, right? Latest example, there is Israel, isn't it? That committed genocide against Palestinian people, and UN basically did nothing to stop this genocide. And don't tell me that UN tried this and that. There were some resolutions and memorandums and stuff. It does not count. Did UN stop genocide of Palestinian people? No. That's what it is. So therefore, I'm not really impressed with this news, because UN is an impotent organization, obviously, but nevertheless, I think fact itself that despite massive Western pressure, this UN body, International Court of Justice, accepted this case from Russian side. They're worth attention, right? Because at least this will highlight crimes that was committed by Western-backed terrorist regime in Kiev since their bloody coup d'état that was orchestrated in Ukraine in 2014. And on this matter, by the way, well, this report said here that there is 10,000 pages that Russia submitted to the court, right? But you, of course, want to know little more details on that. And for example, Miroshnik, Russian high-ranking diplomat, did give us some details of war crimes and crimes against humanity that was committed by Kiev regime. Let me share with you this information. If you are new to alternative media or to my channel, this information may come to you as a big surprise. So according to Ambassador at Large of the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Radion Miroshnik, the total number of civilian casualties and injuries since 2014 has reached tens of thousands. Ambassador Miroshnik reported that since 2014, approximately 28,000 civilians have fallen victim to attacks by the Ukrainian armed forces, of which approximately 13,000 civilians have been killed. RIA Novosti reported about these statements of Miroshnik. According to him, since the beginning of the conflict in 2014, the number of civilian casualties has already reached 41,000 people, of whom about 13,000 have died. The majority of those losses occurred in the Donbass, where the most intense fighting took place. Miroshnik emphasized that these statistics reflect the long-term and widespread consequences of the armed conflict for the region's civilian population. The diplomat also drew attention to the ongoing security threats to civilians caused by shelling by Ukrainian forces. He called the situation a humanitarian catastrophe and called on international community to pay attention to this situation. And what I want to add, dear friends, to this is that every time Kyiv regime has committed crime, I mean, it is difficult to say every time because probably Kyiv regime committed crime that we don't know yet. But in I want to believe that majority of cases were documented because on numerous occasions, on regular basis, security services were opening criminal case whenever there was an artillery strike or missile strike on residential areas, civilian areas, when civilians were injured or killed. Always was open criminal cases, and I think this UN International Court of Justice will receive all these documented information about all of these documented cases of atrocities committed by Kyiv regime against civilians, right? And it's thousands and thousands of cases with all the evidences that will give this court opportunity to have a good understanding of crimes that Kyiv regime committed with assistance of NATO. They killed 13,000 civilians, at least 13,000 civilians. And here, by the way, I mean, this sentence is little confusing. Ambassador at large of the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Miroshnik, reported that since 2014, approximately 28,000 civilians have fallen victim to attacks by the Ukrainian armed forces, of which approximately 30,000 have died. And he also says that since the beginning of the conflict in 2014, number of civilian casualties has already reached 41,000. So it is 28,000 or 41,000. I mean, whenever these media outlets are reporting about something, they need to put some context in it, isn't it? Because it is confusing. It is confusing for me, so it must be confusing for everyone. I mean, are civilian casualties 28,000 or 41,000? But it's tens of thousands. And 13,000 civilians were killed. Also, I remind you, you know what, I'm gonna report about this later on. Will make more sense, I think. And I will continue with this report. Vzгляд News paper is reporting that, Russian frozen assets in Europe might be blocked permanently now. New idea that EU leadership come up with. So Russian assets frozen in the European Union might remain inaccessible to Moscow indefinitely due to a loophole discovered in the EU law. The Financial Times reports. Okay, by the way, do I have to go through the rest of the details here? I don't think it's necessary. We all understand, and I have said it a million times, that Russia will never get back its hands on its own assets that were frozen in the Western world. Not a single penny probably will be given to Russia. And that's it, man. They will steal it one way or another, right? They will steal it. They might call this stealing whatever they want. They might call it that assets were frozen indefinitely, or who cares, man? They're gonna steal these assets. And even this formulation that they come up with is tremendously damaging for the EU, by the way, isn't it? Tremendously damaging, because investors worldwide probably are reading these reports and are thinking, what the hell, man? They can froze my assets indefinitely anytime they want, just because they can. What the hell? This is not right, isn't it? And the report is originated from Financial Times, by the way. report is originated from Financial Times. So this is a Western so-called media outlet that reporting about it, that Russian assets frozen in the European Union may remain permanently inaccessible to Moscow. This was reported by Financial Times, citing sources. European officials have discovered a provision in their legislation that allows sanctions decisions to be made without the need for unanimous consent from their all EU member states. Okay, but okay, EU is finished, man. EU is done. It's a joke, complete joke. Whole Europe is a freaking joke at this point, and it's not just me saying this, by the way. Inform the minority of European country citizens that they will agree with that current leadership in Europe turned these countries into a freaking joke, with maybe few exceptions. The rest is just turning into a hellhole. By the way, that's what it is, right? And seems like no one among our so-called elites in Europe actually care about her reputation. No one. There sometimes, one might think, that some enemies of Europe infiltrated this part of Eurasian continent and put their assets into position of power. That's how damaging these so-called elites of Europe are to the European countries and their European citizens, right? I mean, honestly, don't you think that if you were enemy of, let's say, European Union or European countries, all of them, right? What would you do? You would, a most effective way to deal, if you are considering Europe as an enemy and they are considering you as an enemy, best you can do is actually infiltrate. It might take a long time, decade or 2 decades or 3 decades, but best you can do is infiltrate Europe, right? Then through your means, push forward or promote your assets through bureaucracies there. And at some point, if you are successful, you will create so-called elites in Europe that will kill Europe from within. And that's exactly what is happening. And I'm not saying, by the way, that European elites are working for outside force. Who knows, man? But that's what the enemy would do to Europe. European elites are doing to the European countries what their enemy will do, right? So, I mean, Europeans should think about it, man. Societies in Europe should think about it, because it's a tragedy what is happening to Europe, man. I'm gonna be real here. I have no issues with Europe. These wonderful countries, wonderful people, wonderful culture. In many ways, there were very dark moments in history of Europe. Many European countries, very dark pages, by the way. But if we are talking about societies and culture and people, ordinary people in general, I don't think they deserve this shit, man. I don't think they deserve to be led by these fucking morons like Ursula, Macron, Starmer, or Merz, or just pick one, man. There are no decent human beings in European elites, man, right? You might say, well, there are exceptions. I mean, Hungary is kind of trying to stay adequate, and Slovakia under the Ficos government. Yeah, I will agree on that. Okay, but the rest, by the way, what about the rest? It's a hellhole, man. And I just mentioned Hungary, isn't it? And I remind you, dear friends, that these very moronic elites of Europe, according to Orban also, I was saying this many times before, but according to Orban too, are planning to launch a war or get engaged in a war with Russia by 2030. And yes, I also spoke about this because there is indicators of that, isn't it? These militarization programs, most of the militarization programs, at least major part of it, that Europe is adopting, has to be finalized by 2029, 2030. But this was optimistic plans that European elites had. On the battlefield, by the way, situation is developing so rapidly that European elites have to change or make some changes in their plans for sure, because Kyiv regime not gonna last. Their proxy Kyiv regime not gonna last until 2029 or 2030. Not possible, by the way, right? Kyiv regime might not last before end of 2026 even, right? And that's why I think US is demanding from European elites to accelerate militarization process and be in a position of and by 2027 be in a position to able to, as they call, protect themselves, right? In reality, while they are saying protecting ourselves, that means to attack Russia, right? And US is demanding, by the way, from Europe to be in that position by 2027. And why is that? Because unlike many European so-called leaders that are refusing to face the reality, some think tanks, at least in US, are actually paying attention to developments, to real developments on the ground, and are realizing that, well, Kyiv regime not going to last, by the way, for 2029 until 2029, 2030. So that's why I guess those think tanks recommended to White House to push European elites to accelerate the militarization process and be ready for a war by 2027. And I'm afraid towards the end of, in second part of 2026, or most definitely in 2027, we will see direct clashes between European NATO troops and Russian troops. Scale of these clashes is hard to tell. Obviously, could be, let's say, local scale, could be large scale. I don't know, but I think either in 2020, second part of 2026, or in 2027, unfortunately, we will most likely see direct clashes between European NATO troops and Russian troops. And I'm highlighting European NATO troops because probably US will stay out of it. US officially or formally will not send its troops to be engaged directly with Russia, because that might lead to full-scale nuclear exchange. US will be engaged in a war against Russia through intelligence, through weapons, through private military companies, or through other means, right? But I don't think US will send its troops to fight Russian militaries openly, right? But European countries will. First of all, the so-called coalition of willing, but some others too. And I can even tell you potential directions of their attacks. It's a Finland, by the way. It's a Baltics, generally speaking. I expect clashes to occur in the Baltics region, and potentially, we might see clashes between NATO troops and Russian troops also on territory of the so-called Ukraine. On southern sectors, let's say Odessa region, for example, in the central areas, on the north potentially also. So I think at this point, a direct conflict between European NATO member states and Russia is even unavoidable, based on the trajectory of the European elites or the globalists, right, and their allies, neocons in US and their Zionists and so on. Let's continue. And well, the Europeans might, I just mentioned, isn't it, that Europeans are considering to forever froze Russian assets. New way of describing stealing. They're gonna forever froze Russian assets. Okay. But well, I don't think anybody here in Russia was expecting those assets to come back, right? But Moscow can deal with that. Moscow can deal with this situation. I reported earlier, dear friends, that there are around $300 billion of dollars worth of direct Western investments here in Russia. from which around 200 billion is from Europe, right? And number of experts here in Russia, number of officials even hinted on several occasions that in case Europe will finally, steal Russian assets, Moscow will retaliate, most likely, and will confiscate as a compensation these Western investments into Russian Federation. And probably, yeah, that will be one way that Moscow will react. And also, it is worth paying attention to overall financial strength of the Russian Federation. And in this regard, dear friends, let me remind you that Russia has a safety cushion. Russian economy has safety cushion for worth about $1 trillion, right? 700 billion is in gold and the foreign currency reserves, right? There is also a national sovereign fund there. There is also other funds, right? So Moscow can accumulate at need about $1 trillion, right? Maybe more, from which 310 billion is gold, actual gold, by the way, right? And on this matter, we have an update here from RIA Novosti that Russian gold reserves yet again reach a new record level, all-time high. And let me give you some details on that. So Russia's gold reserves have reached an all-time high, valued at the 310 billion. The country's central bank has estimated the precious metal, traditionally viewed as a hedge against the inflation and the currency fluctuate currency fluctuations, broke their historic $4,000 mark in October in 2023. Gold traded in 2023, by the way, gold was traded below $2,000 for an ounce, while this year gold reached 4,000 plus level. It's doubled in price, basically. And this, of course, had a massive impact on reserves of the countries that had a big stockpile of gold. Russia is one of them. So according to statistics released by the Bank of Russia, the country's gold reserves stood at $310.7 billion as of December 1st. Its estimate shows that Moscow's investments in bullion of all sorts of reserves rose by a record $92 billion over the past 12 months. Last month, the World's Gold Council ranked Russia as the fifth biggest investor in gold globally, surpassed only by the US, by the way, big buyer, Germany, Italy, and France. So, well, these countries, by the way, also investing in the gold, and as many others do. And this, of course, drives gold prices ever higher. And also, fact that leading Western economies are invested in gold this heavily clearly indicates that they are afraid that their currencies gonna go burst, right? Maybe not immediately, but their currency is gonna become significantly weaker, right? And one of the ways how they can try to influence this process of de-dollarization, or this process of world turning its back on Western currencies, dollar, euro, pound, Swiss franc, and so on, is to increase gold volumes, right? To at least to create impression that what our currency worth for something, while in reality it's a fiat currencies, they worth nothing, right? Only reason why they still are relevant is because of psyche of the humans. People think dollar worth something. It's a picking paper, man. It worth nothing, right? If most of the countries, outside of the US, stop trading in dollars today, that's it. That's it, man. Dollar is dead, right? So what is the value of dollar then? Dollar don't depends on American economy. It depends on world economy. Right? That's why it called reserve currency. But de-dollarization is going on, accelerating, and give it another 5-10 years, by the way, and let's see where US dollar gonna be, or the euro for that matter. Anyways, Russia is the fifth country when it comes to investments into gold, and the overall volume of Russian gold, by the way, is 2,300 tons or something like that, even higher. And it is good to know that Russia is bringing back to Russia its gold that was stored in vaults into other countries. For example, on this topic, we have this information here that in late October, just a couple of weeks ago, it became known that the Reserve Bank of India, and it's not just Russia, but also other countries. So in late October, it became known that the Reserve Bank of India, for example, has returned around 64 tons of its gold reserves from overseas vaults between April and September, preceded by several other massive transfers. The move came aimed concerns over the freezing of the more than 300 billion in Russian sovereign and private assets by the West, right? So it's not just Russia, but many countries worldwide that focused on gold and bringing back gold that they had in vaults of in other countries. I want to believe that if not all of the Russian gold, hopefully most of it is stored in Russia. And I hope not even ounce of Russian gold is stored in the West. I really hope so. I'm not sure about it because, after all, somehow Russia invested 300 billion in the West, isn't it? Which was a stupid decision to do, obviously. And we all know now this, but yeah, because somehow we end up in this shit and are gonna lose this 300 billion now. Maybe still to nowadays there's some volume of Russian gold that is stored somewhere in the West, man. Would not be surprised for sure, but hopefully this is not the case. Hopefully lessons being learned, and never ever Russia will invest in the West anything. Not even a single freaking cent, man. Not even single ounce. West cannot be trusted ever, by the way, right? Anyways, let's continue with some other news. And well, Trump makes headlines here in Russia, as he always does, by the way, not just in Russia but worldwide. He is quite a headline maker for sure. And well, this time around, I want to share with you a short video of him talking about Zelensky. Not in the most pleasant, not even in most pleasant way. Although, by the way, I think it's only a matter of time and Trump will flip-flop again. He's a master of the flip-flops, isn't it? So today he might be critical of Zelensky. Tomorrow he might write that Zelensky is the greatest leader the world has ever seen. It all depends who will talk to him last, right? So therefore, from practical standpoint, Trump's takes have no meaning whatsoever. But he's a showman, right? He makes shows, and in that capacity as a showman, yeah, you know, we can take a look at his statements, and let me give you this short video. Let me give you this short video of his takes on Zelensky.
Ukraine talks after last week's negotiations.
So we've been speaking to President Putin, and we've been speaking to Ukrainian leaders, including President Zelensky. And I have to say that I'm a little bit disappointed that President Zelensky hasn't yet read the proposal. That was as of a few hours ago. His people love it. but he hasn't. Russia's fine with it. Russia, I guess, would rather have the whole country when you think of it. But Russia is, I believe, fine with it. But I'm not sure that Zelensky is fine with it. His people love it. But he hasn't read it. So someday you'll explain that one to me, Jeff.
So you see, seems like Trump wake up in a bad mood. He wake up in a bad mood and went after Zelensky. Okay, I wonder how long this critical attitude will last. It is anybody's guess, of course. But one of the reasons why Trump was critical of Zelensky could be that yesterday or day before, Zelensky and Witkoff with Kushner had a 2-hour conversation, isn't it? And I did report about it. About this meeting, and according to media reports, sides did not really manage to find a common ground on several topics. One of them being withdrawal of Kiev regime's troops from Donbass region, for example, as it was part of Trump's so-called 28-pointer peace plan originally. And there are some other issues that Zelensky is disagreeing. And when we say Zelensky, we have to say globalists, isn't it? Because Zelensky alone is empty space, right? Nothing, nobody. But through him, globalists are highlighting certain positions, obviously. Globalists and globalist control regimes in Europe. First of all, this so-called coalition of willing, for example, right? And maybe Trump was not happy with Zelensky because of it, and he's saying that Zelensky don't want the escalation, while Russia wants the escalation. But yet again, Trump is a master of flip-flops. Today he might say one thing, tomorrow exactly the opposite. So therefore, at this point, we only can take Trump as a showman. And that's about it. I personally trust nothing that comes out of either Washington or from any other Western capital. I literally trust nothing, period. No matter how hard they're going to try to ensure Russian side that, well, they are honest while saying this or that. No, man, they should never, ever be trusted. And I hope Russian leadership will never trust them. I really hope so, man. They cannot be trust towards these individuals that are running the show in the West, right? And also, dear friends, I think this is interesting news here that Europe itself, first of all, coalition of willing, and that is globalists once again, are pressuring Zelensky not to agree to withdraw troops from Donbass. And so why would Zelensky agree, by the way, right, on this Trump's peace plan, which demands withdrawal of Kiev regime's forces from Donbass? Of course, he would not agree, right? And no one, at this point, no one even hiding in Europe among these so-called elites there that they are absolutely against the escalation. They are against the escalation, right? They don't want it. They talk peace. They don't talk about peace literally on a daily basis. But same time, if you take a look at their policies, if you take a look at the details even in their speeches, by the way, you will realize that, I mean, these guys say, you know what, we are for peace, but there is always but. And after but, they start pushing some crazy stuff, isn't it? So they are absolutely against peace, against sustainable peace and the ending of the hostility. It's exactly the opposite. They want to prolong this proxy war as much as possible. And today we will have more indicators, more confirmations of that, because they're going to be meeting of coalition of willing in, or at least leaders of some of their countries from coalition of willing, France, UK, Germany, for sure, right? And Zelensky, by the way, going to be presented there. And let's see what they're going to say again. Probably they will continue to push this crazy narrative that Ukraine is winning, Ukraine can win, West will achieve strategical defeat of Russia, and that kind of crap, right? that kind of nonsense. At this point, I don't even know, is it worth to pay any attention to these kind of meetings that are taking place, because nothing that Macron says, nothing that Stammer says or Merz says makes any sense, really. So, and only reason I'm paying attention to statements of these people is because they are representing countries. In case of Macron and Starmer, nuclear countries. So, in one hand, yes, these speaking morons don't really deserve that attention, but on the other hand, globalists are using these very people to push their policies, right? To implement their policies that are tremendously hostile towards Russia. So it's this dilemma, isn't it? Otherwise, these people truly don't deserve no freaking attention, man. Absolutely not. So let's see what they're gonna say today. They will gather in London. Maybe, I don't think meeting has started already. It's 11:51 here in Moscow, so London is like 2 hours behind, isn't it? 2 or 3 hours behind. So it's still relatively early morning there. So I guess in few hours from now, they will start this meeting, and we will get some additional information. Also, what I want to share with you, dear friends, is that I already spoke about lack of trust towards the Western elites, isn't it? And this is absolutely understandable. But on this matter, by the way, we have this report of Ushakov, who is saying that U.S. promise to strictly implement the agreements on Ukraine, right? Which means that, lack of trust clearly plays significant role during the talks between Russian and American sides. And I'm going to tell you, dear friends, I feel like, or it seems to me that Russian foreign ministry absolutely fed up wasting time in these useless talks with their American representatives. And if you have seen, I mean, Russian foreign ministry kind of has distanced itself, or stays away, kind of, right, from this all nonsensical talks. Witkov, Kushner, Trump. I mean, foreign ministry had enough. Russian diplomats had enough of this nonsense, right? And I understand them completely. But Russia cannot close the door for diplomacy, obviously, and will never do so. And therefore, of course, Russian president don't really have an option but to, yes, have some contacts with his American counterparts, even if Putin knows perfectly well, and he knows obviously that literally nothing that comes out of Trump or Witkov or Kushner or whomever, Rubio, Vance, anybody from U.S. current administration or any other administration cannot be trusted, right? Not even for a second. And this lack of trust clearly plays some significant role. Otherwise, why would the American side promise that the agreements reached by the U.S. President Donald Trump and on Ukraine will be strictly implemented, right? As Ushakov is saying, and we have quote here, the Americans swear that if Trump agrees to something, it's a sure thing. Ushakov said in an interview with the journalist Paul Zarubin for the program Moscow, Kremlin, Putin, which airs on the Russia One TV channel. The journalist published the excerpt on his Telegram channel. And another quote here, the Americans we are talking to right now are constantly emphasizing that they are different than, that Trump is different, that he has a different ideology, and they are constantly emphasizing that under Trump, this conflict in Ukraine would not have started, which is BS, by the way. Trump was president already, isn't it? During his first term, he was sending little weapons to the regime, and U.S. was playing a leading role even then, by the way, during the Trump's first term, to prop up this terrorist regime in Kiev, to prepare them as much as possible for this proxy war that they eventually launch. And US still plays leading role in this proxy war now, right? So this is all BS, by the way. I mean, how can we seriously discuss this stuff? How? But yes, that's Ushakov is saying that, well, these Americans that represent US now are constantly trying to emphasize that they are different, they can be trusted, you know. I mean, previous administration was different, they could not be trusted, but we are good guys, yeah, trust us. These people are very close to Trump, they serve him, and it seems they strictly follow his instructions. The Kremlin spokesman noted he is not Kremlin spokesman, he's aide of the Russian president, Ushakov. But nevertheless, by the way, fact itself that during the negotiations, representatives of Trump's administration have to try their best to present themselves as someone that actually can trust it is already quite telling, isn't it? It's already quite telling. They are in a bad place, by the way. U.S. Elites, Western elites in general, are in a very dark place because, yet again, they lost trust of everybody. They lost trust of their own population, and they lost trust on geopolitical scale too. And obviously, just the words from Trump's representatives that yes, trust us because, I mean, you see, we are different. I mean, really, man, that's what you are coming up with, that you are different, so therefore we have to trust. How are you different? And who gives a fuck you are different or not, man? What is your policies? What is your policies? Let's see on the ground. What policies do you have? And I think that's the way to go, isn't it? Policies matter. Policies. Because talk is cheap. And when it comes to policies, well, Trump's first administration was extremely hostile towards Russia. And Trump's second administration, second term, US is still leading country in this proxy war against Russia. In his second term, this is policies, by the way. This is policies, right? And every other day we are receiving more and more information about hostile steps, hostile policies that US is implementing. Yet again, talk is cheap. Verbally, they can say anything they want, right? Either Trump or Witkoff or Kushner or whomever, they can verbally say literally anything. It does not matter because policies are something that we are interested in, right? We pay attention to. And when it comes to these policies, by the way, what about this report? That United States will spend at least around 800 million to support Ukraine militarily in 2026, 2027. This is policy, you know. Just a minute ago, I reported that Ushakov was saying that Trump's representatives of U.S. administration are trying hard to persuade us that they can be trusted and they will follow agreements and they will honor agreements, or US will honor agreements. And at the same time, let me answer the difference. Алло? У меня лайвстрим. Okay, my apologies, dear friends, sir. Yeah. So that's the policy here, isn't it? On one hand, they're saying, trust us, we are for peace, we are good guys. And on the other hand, we have this report that US in 2026, 2027 will spend at least 800 million. And this is from Pentagon funds, by the way. This is from Pentagon funds alone. Let's keep that in mind. US already, according to Mark Rutte, Secretary General of NATO, US already transferred their $4 billion worth of weapons to Kiev regime, and before end of this year, weapons for another billion will be transferred through. That's what Rutte is saying, Secretary General of NATO. That's the policy, right? That's the factual stuff that indicates that US was, is, and there most likely will be a leading country in this proxy war that West is waging against Russia. And this information is also a policy that matters. So the US Defense Department draft budget allocates 400 million each for support for Ukraine in 2026, 2027. This is stated in a published document on which Congress will begin voting this week. And by the way, this is just a draft. In Congress, these so-called lawmakers, most of them who are paid by US military-industrial complex and other groups of interest, influential, powerful groups of interest that want to prolong this proxy war. Well, of course, they will try to do to increase this number significantly. So in the end, it might be not 800 million for 2026 or 2027, but 8 billion, or maybe even 80 billion, by the way, who knows, right? But this is policy. In any case, if Trump was for peace, if US was for peace, by the way, then why you are allocating 850 million from Pentagon alone for the regime? What the hell you are doing? How are you for peace if you are still sending weapons for billions and billions, as Rutte confirmed? So you tell me now, is there any reason why Trump's administration can be trusted ever? Nothing to be said about this false promises from U.S. leadership that Washington will honor agreements that might be reached in regards to Ukrainian crisis and so on. They're not going to honor nothing, by the way, right? Most likely in 2028, Democrats going to take over White House. So-called Democrats. They are anything but Democrats, man. They're freaking psychos. But anyways, right? So in midterm elections now, Democrats, so-called Democrats, gonna overtake House and Senate, most likely in the US. And in 2028, they're gonna overtake White House. And you're gonna tell me that whoever this behind the scene powerful influential forces gonna put in a position of president for next term, after in 2028, that someone, Kamala Harris or I don't know, man, whoever they're gonna come up with, man, who cares, right? It does not really matter. So Trump's representatives are saying that person from Democrat side will honor agreements that Trump will reach. Really? Did Trump honor the agreements or the decisions of the previous administration? No. Just a few days ago, he basically annulled dozens of decisions of Biden, and he used, and as an excuse, he used this AutoPAN stuff, right? And even without AutoPAN, Trump was destroying, basically, right? Or rolling back on quite a number of policies of previous administration. And the same was done during the first Trump presidency, isn't it? Because you remember Obama, for example, reached a deal with Iran. It was a bigger topic, isn't it? It was a big deal, by the way. And this is just one example. So Obama is reaching agreement, Obama together with some European states are reaching agreement with Iran. Russia was also participating in all this story. And then Trump was put in office by these influential forces in the US, and he derailed this process, isn't it, of the escalation between West and Iran. he annulled this agreement with Iran. Did he honor agreements of his previous administrations? No, he didn't. And why should anybody believe that next administration will honor anything that comes from current administration? The US is fucked up, man. There is no consistency in terms of there is no consistency in US's declared policies, right? Because yet again, declared policy is one, and real policy is very different. Real policy never changes. Policies that are actually implemented on the ground, it's more or less same always, right? Forever wars, and the military-industrial complex have to be happy, and the Zionists have to be happy, and the neocons have to be happy, and globalists have to be happy. That's consistent stuff. But when it comes to declared policies, there is no consistency whatsoever, isn't it? One administration agrees on certain stuff with their countries worldwide, then another comes and derails these agreements, right? And by doing so, and this is intentional, obviously, this is intentional because, as I said many times before, Western world, Western elites, traditionally, historically speaking, are using diplomacy as a deception. They are using agreements, diplomacy as a deception, as a weapon, because they don't want no agreements with nobody. They want to dominate. They want to dictate to everyone what to do, when, how, and so on, right? But because they are in no position and will never be in a position to dominate by total force or totally dominate by force, therefore they are using diplomacy to lure these countries and that countries into some sort of traps, right? With these fake agreements that they are signing up for. So therefore, if I understand this, by the way, then hopefully Russian leadership understands this also, and they will never ever trust anyone from either Washington or any other Western capital. This kind of statements even it should be embarrassing for the US, by the way, when Ushakov is saying that, well, representatives of Trump's administration are swearing, basically promising, trying hard to ensure us that, well, they will honor agreements. That's quite a low level, man. How low administration in the US have to be to basically beg for a trust, right? And even then, they are begging, by the way, to fool Russia. Don't be mistaken. They are not begging Russia for trust because they actually want the escalation. No, man, they are begging Russia to be trusted so that they will fool Russia again. That's their attitude. That's their intent. And we're not gonna trust them, man. No, not happening. What other news I have, by the way? I mentioned, by the way, that Russian foreign ministry seems to me that is fed up, absolutely fed up with these nonsensical talks with U.S. administration and with Western elites in general, right? Because yet again, man, these are highly educated, high-level professionals, right, that we are talking about in foreign ministry. These are professional diplomats, by the way. They hate to waste time. All professionals hate to waste time, right? Especially, when you are on very important position. And because Russia cannot close the door, Russian president is using his aides, basically, Ushakov and Dmitriev, to be engaged in some sort of talks, right? To create this, to paint this picture that, we are open for dialogue, but Russian foreign ministry, Russian diplomats are very busy, man. They're very busy. They have no time for this shit, right? So I have 2 aides here, 2 assistants, and then they will talk to you, right? Sometimes I might talk to you too. And that's about it, right? I understand this situation. And well, foreign ministry, it's meanwhile is making quite interesting statements. Ryabkov, for example, deputy of foreign minister, and Ryabkov, according to some, could be next foreign minister of the Russian Federation, and he is a quite hardliner, by the way. He's, even though he is a high-level diplomat or highly skilled diplomat, he's not afraid to use some strong language if necessary, while staying in field of politeness, right, and diplomacy. He's a tough guy. I mean, that's my impression. That Ryabkov is a tough guy, man. And we have statements here that Russia stands shoulder to shoulder with Venezuela, according to Ryabkov. And he also added that Russia is urging Trump not to slip into a conflict with Maduro's Venezuela. And so, yes, that's the message, isn't it? That's the message that Russia is sending. And dear friends, my take about US-Venezuela escalation, I'm saying for how long now that only reason why US did not yet attack Venezuela because Washington afraid that Russia might revenge on US there. Russia might provide Venezuela with such assistance that will turn Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean Sea into a graveyard for US Navy, and will turn the land of Venezuela in a graveyard for US military, US ground forces, right? That's what I think Washington and their US political and military leadership is afraid of. And rightfully so, by the way. And rightfully so, because if the US dares to attack Venezuela, after which I believe in their ground plan, next is Cuba and a number of other countries, US clearly wants to reconquer, let's say, Latin American countries that are not really obeying orders from their Washington. Russia is sending quite a clear message: stay away from Venezuela, or else, by the way, And I think my take is also correct. That the only reason why US didn't attack yet is because they are afraid. They're afraid that Russia will revenge. Russia will support Venezuela with all means necessary, so that Venezuelan people will be able to protect themselves, right? And same time, of course, motivation. One of the motivations, let's say, not only one, but one of the motivations for Russia will be to revenge for all the death, revenge against US and against everybody who was one way or another involved in the death and destruction of Russian people and Russian property and Russian interests. And this statement of Ryabkov is very important, I think, that Russia stands shoulder to shoulder. This is clear message, by the way, that, you go in Venezuela, we're going to bleed you out, nachrin. We're going to bleed you out, man. That's what Moscow is saying. That's what foreign ministry is saying. My interpretation, by the way, of course, Ryabkov, this high-level diplomat, of course, is using different language, but I think that's what this statement means. Share your take, dear friends, what you think about it. And it's not just Russia, by the way. Let's be real here. Western countries, including US, harm so many millions of people worldwide. So many countries and so many people. Hundreds of millions of people, by the way. Hundreds of millions of people, at least, potentially billions of people we are talking about, were harmed by their Western elites that control Western countries in just the last few decades, man. That's the level of evil that Western elites are and committing on this planet, I can understand that citizens of Western countries, might don't like this to hear, but this is true, isn't it? That's what Western elites are, man. That's what Western ruling class is, evil force, and they are threat to everybody, including for citizens of Western countries too. Take a look at the euro, by the way. Are Europeans happy with what is happening to their societies, to their countries, to their economies? I don't think they are happy. Who did it? Who did it to them? Their own so-called elites, man. Russia did not invade Europe. China did not invade Europe. Iran did not invade Europe. Brazil did not invade Europe. Venezuela did not invade Europe. No, it's a European ruling class, Western ruling class that did it to Europe, right? So I think this is very important. This is very important. Moscow is sending stricter warning to Washington to stay away from Venezuela and from Russian friends, basically. Meanwhile, I think that this information is also worth attention that Turkey has begun deploying its militaries, its armed forces in northern Syria, and reports are that Turkey is preparing to launch yet another relatively large-scale military operation against Kurdish militia that is in control of significant parts of the northern Syria. Let's see, by the way, let's see what is going to happen. But in that part of the world, winter is a time when high intensity conflict or relatively large scale conflicts usually are down because of the weather conditions, right? And I would not be surprised at all if we're going to see tremendous escalation in between Damascus, new regime in Damascus, also Turkey, and Kurdish forces. Let's see. Also, dear friends, there was an attempt of coup d'etat yesterday in Benin, right? And the earlier reports were that these coup plotters were successful, kind of. They managed to establish control over the TV station. They were broadcasting some messages, right, to the audience, but eventually they failed. And the current regime in Benin, which is a Western-controlled regime, by the way, French-controlled regime, French proxy, basically. They prevailed, not without direct assistance of France and other French proxies in the region. Reports are that French Air Force and the Nigerian Air Force were targeting these units of Benin's military armed forces that launched this coup d'etat attempt. So eventually, even ECOWAS, by the way, organization that unites, I believe, Western African countries, some of them, not all of them, but some of them, decided to deploy its troops into Benin, right? And so, yes, this coup d'etat was suppressed. This coup d'etat was suppressed. Too bad for Benin, by the way. They are slaves of French, and they will maintain this status to be slaves of the French. Maybe they love to be slaves, by the way, in Benin. I don't know. Maybe majority wants to be slaves, man, and kiss the feet of the whiter masters, French masters. If they love to do this, then it's their choice, right? Who am I to tell them, you know what, you should be free, man? No, they want to be slaves, so let them be slaves, man. Fuck them all, right? These coup d'etat plotters, they clearly wanted to be free, and they will be free most likely, really free. They're all gonna be executed, most likely. They're all gonna get killed, man, by these French slaves. That's the story there. That's the story. Unfortunately, freedom fighters failed. Freedom fighters failed, yet again, due to direct involvement of France and other French proxies. And this ECOWAS, by the way, is French freaking proxies. None of these countries can be respected. Not countries necessarily, but none of the regimes in these quasi-states can be respected. Freaking slaves, by the way. fuck him all, right? That's it. I cannot be politically correct towards their individuals that have no self-respect, man. Fuck him all, right? Fucking slaves, man. RIA Novosti is reporting that fighting broke out on the border between Thailand and Cambodia. Again, this is a conflict that I believe Washington provoked, actually, so that Trump then can it resolve. And to provoke conflict, that was easy part, right? Then Trump, you know the story, Trump bragged about solving the issue and bringing these two sides together. I just reminded you, friends, that Cambodia is a U.S. proxy, right? Cambodia is greatly influenced by U.S. Thailand also, sort of, but Thailand is much more independent from the Western influence than Cambodia is. And so, therefore, they, despite all this shows that was put up by Trump, how he resolved conflict that he started, actually, he provoked between Thailand and Cambodia. These countries are continuing to shell each other and kill each other, because it's always easy to provoke conflict, but to actually end it, well, it's difficult. It's much harder, right? And I'm gonna end this new segment with this report that Macron is threatening China, by the way, with EU tariffs. Macron was in China in last several days. Maybe he's still in China. I'm not sure about it. But yeah, he decided to threaten China. I mean, how sick this creature is, really. We all understand this is a mental ill element that needs medical treatment for sure, right? But how sick this guy is, and why he is not being removed already? Because what the hell, man? What's going on here, right? So French President Emmanuel Macron threatened China with the tariffs from the European Union if it fails to resolve the trade deficit between Brussels and Beijing. So what should Chinese do? There is a quite significant trade deficit, by the way, not in favor of EU. And so what they expect China to do, man? What China have to do? European companies are, and this deficit is going to only increase because goods that are produced in Europe are just too freaking expensive. Those goods, by the way, that are produced in Europe were expensive even 10 years ago, 15 years ago, right? But now they become so expensive that even in European market, these European companies are losing the market share to Chinese companies, to companies from other countries, right? Because yet again, produce something in Europe is just freaking expensive. First of all, because of the energy. And why energy is this expensive in Europe? Well, I mean, who will guess? Because these morons that are in charge of Europe decided that they don't want to have good relationships with Russia. They want to launch a war against Russia. And they did it in a hope that they will destroy Russia, occupy Russia, divide it, and then rob it, right? And use Russian resources for themselves. So they will manage to compete again. But they failed. They failed, isn't it? And therefore, they are freaking doomed, man. They are just doomed. They had a good chance to maintain relevance on geopolitical scale, to maintain a level of competitiveness, while further improving relationships with Russia, not destroying relationships, but improving relationships. But they chose otherwise. They chose otherwise, and obviously year-on-year terms deficit now in trade between Europe and France, Europe and some others, is increasing, and yet again, not in favor of Europe. And it's just Europe's fault, man. China can do nothing about it. Well, Beijing should tell its companies, Chinese companies, not to sell nothing in Europe. There is demand, isn't it? It's a free market. there is demand on stuff from China, and China is providing. Let the European companies be more competitive. Let them try if they can. But yes, that's the world that we are living in, man. This cycle is threatening China with the tariffs. Okay, man. Let me give you a quote. I told Chinese that if they don't react, then we Europeans will be forced to take tough measures in the coming months and stop cooperation following their US example. For example, by introducing tariffs on Chinese goods, he said in an interview with the Echos. Okay, do it. Macron added that he had discussed this issue with the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. He also noted that he believes a peaceful resolution to the trade dispute with China is possible. Yeah, that's why you are threatening China, isn't it? And I can imagine Chinese officials are sitting there reading this news and thinking, what the hell, man? How are you going to do business with these cycles, man? I mean, really, how? I don't know. So yes, let them introduce tariffs on China. By the way, if European elites think that they did not ruin life of their countrymen enough already, then yeah, let them then continue, and they will of course, until European citizens, European societies are quiet and doing nothing. Well, why would these so-called elites stop destroying Europe, man? You tell me. I'm telling you, this European ruling class is definitely acting as a foreign occupying force, man. As if some hostile side infiltrated Europe and they're through different means and through time put in position of power all these sick motherfuckers, man. Sorry for my French, but I mean, these are sick creatures. Macron, Starmer, Ursula, and Kaya Kallas, by the way. Number one diplomat of Europe, Kaya Kallas, man. That's an anecdote on its own. All you need to know about state of Europe is who is their top diplomat. It's a Kaya Kallas. Okay, that tells us the whole story. Okay, dear friends, this is it for this. This is it for news segment. Hopefully, you did find it interesting, useful, and if so, dear friends, please like the video. There was a super chat on Rumble, dear friends, from Blorp. Let me highlight, if I may, now. And I will also check Boosty. Maybe there was some questions from Boosty. Seems like there was no questions from Boosty, by the way. But I will highlight now a super chat from Blorp. And so, dear friends, if you like the show, main part of it, news segment and stuff, please click that like button, leave some commentary, share video with your friends if you can. That will help to deal with the algorithm. And for God's sake, I forgot to. I forgot to drop a link in middle of the show, link to my Rumble channel, man. I will tomorrow. Hopefully, I will remember. Anyways, it's too late now for that. But this is a super chat from Blorp. Thank you very much, Blorp, for your super chat on Rumble and $5 donation. And Blorp is commenting: Odessa, Kaliningrad, St. Petersburg trade zone should be their mem. Odessa, Kaliningrad, St. Petersburg trade zone should be their mem. Okay. Mem, you mean something that will irritate Western elites, or maybe my English is not my first language, so sometimes I struggle to understand well enough. But well, Odessa, Kaliningrad, St. Petersburg, let's say triangle will definitely become reality and part of Russia. Kaliningrad and St. Petersburg is Russia, obviously, and Odessa is Russia too, but not yet freed from NATO influence yet, or Western influence, but will be. I'm 100% convinced that this most likely this conflict will end when Russian troops will reach borders of the Western Ukraine. Western Ukraine is a different story. Let their Western neighbors of this former Soviet Republic deal with it, right? But rest of the territory definitely will, one way or another, but will join Russian Federation because it's a Russia, and Russian territory, historically Russian territory, should be part of Russia. I mean, period. There is nothing to discuss there, really, right? It is what it is. So I'm 100% convinced, by the way, Odessa region will come back to Russia for sure. No doubts about it, man. I mean, Odessa is Russia. It's a Russian city. It's built by Russians, by the way, right? So it's a purely Russian city, and will be in Russia soon. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lord, for your super chatter and support and attention. And dear friends, this is it. This is it for now. Hopefully you did like the stream. Have a wonderful day, and take care. Bye for now.